Dana, 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 dana. Yeah! Alright, hello everybody, welcome to AP Human Geopolitical Lessons. This one I did at the very end last year, but I'm gonna do it first this time, because why not? Changing things up. So, alright, this lesson is the empires of the world in 2020. You probably didn't know it, but we still have empires. They're a thing. There's certain parts of this planet that are owned by other countries. So we're just going to talk about a lot of these places that don't have independence and are totally dominated by either France, UK, USA, Denmark, Netherlands, or Spain. Yeah, you probably didn't think about Denmark and the Netherlands on there, but they're winners in everyone's book. So in this Prezi, I usually gave out a map to my students, had them color parts of the world in with these various imperial powers. If you have a map at home, that's cool. It's just, knowing where all this stuff is. But yeah, let's check it out. Let's do it. Empires of the world today. Alright, here's the overall map of where I'm going to go with this. It's mostly a lot of tiny islands all around the world that are just sort of owned by other countries. So I'm just gonna go into these, see what's up. What's up with all this? Why are all these islands owned by other countries? Why don't they declare their independence? That's a great question. And most of these islands are actually in the Caribbean Sea. I have a student from Saint Maarten, and she is a Dutch citizen, even though she's way down there in the Netherlands. So that's always an interesting thing. Why is that the case? We're going to talk about it. Okay, so back during the age of imperialism, we're talking like 150 years ago, a few European countries basically took over the world. The exception, of course, being Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, but almost every other piece of planet Earth was owned by white people at some point. That's kind of the world you live in. And there still are some of these leftover imperialism relics, some of these random islands that just didn't really have the vibe for independence and are still left over from this period even now in 2020. So, that's really where I'm going to go with this. It's these powerful imperial countries took over all these islands around the world and they just never gave them up. So that's really what we're talking about today. They still got their colonies. All right, moving on. So, yep, this was the world in 1914. It was basically owned by like 10 countries. Okay, so the British Empire, probably the winner of global conquest. After World War II, Britain let almost all of their empire turn independent, okay? Because right here, this map, I'll go back to the words in a second. But this was all owned by Britain. What is this? 150 years ago. Actually, even most of it was still owned by it during World War II. So we're talking like 70 years ago. Britain still owned just about everything in red. Like the sun never set on the British Empire. They were all over planet Earth. But after the end of World War II, so that's roughly 1949 or 1945. Britain let most of these bigger countries go independent. I think Canada actually stayed with them until like the 80s. Canada, come on, get with the game. But a lot of these former colonies and imperial holdings, they still have a special relationship with Britain. It's called the British Commonwealth of Nations. And kind of a random thing is a lot of these Commonwealth countries still acknowledge the British royal family as their royal family. So Elizabeth II, the current monarch of the British royal family, she not only is the Queen of England and the UK, she's the Queen of Canada, the Queen of Australia, the Queen of New Zealand, and the Queen of like 18 Caribbean islands. They have her picture on their money. So, yeah, even though the British Empire gave up a lot of these countries around the world, they still got a lot of British influence. They also do something every 4 years called the Commonwealth Games. It's kind of like the Olympics, but just for these countries. Also, all these countries, guess what the lingua franca is? The same language I'm speaking. It's English. And yeah, that's just a huge reason why English is the language of the world, because Britain just spread it out so much. Yeah, but so yeah, these are the Commonwealth countries, and even though they have independence, they I know they have a lot of economic relationships. Like for example, Australia and Canada have like really easy immigration and work visas. So you can just be like, "What up, Canada? High five!" Like I think Prince Harry just moved to Canada because he's also the Prince of Canada and the Prince of England. So there you go. All right, let's check it out. So here's the Commonwealth. If you had a world map, I'd want you to know where the Commonwealth is. A lot of people forget about little Belize. This country right here below Mexico. They speak English there. Suriname, English. Nigeria, English. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, all these African countries, English. Pakistan, India. The official language of India is English, which blows my mind. Malaysia, their language is English. And of course, Australia, New Zealand, New Guinea, and a bunch of these islands in the Pacific, all English. Yes, even Malta and Crete right there in the Mediterranean Sea. English. That's the thing. So here's the Commonwealth of Nations, 53 member states. To give you some perspective, there are 200 countries in the world. So a quarter of all the countries on planet Earth are on Team UK, which is just a lot. And then, yeah, these are the Commonwealth of Nations, and I think this map sort of shows you how much they recognize the royal family. So, like, India, they totally gave up on the royal family. Like, Elizabeth, you're not the Queen of India anymore. But yeah, some of these African countries even still have relationships with the royal family, which is interesting. Yes, the Queen of Belize. Latin America, you didn't escape. All right, so, yeah, now, this one shows you these are parts of the United Kingdom that they never gave up. So, Canada has independence. South Africa has independence. Australia has independence. But there are these, I don't even know how many of these are, probably like 20 islands around the world that do not have independence. They are all directly administered out of London. So, the big ones to know, I'll go back to the words in a second. The big ones to know are Cyprus, Gibraltar, the Falkland Islands, and one of these is St. Helena. That's where Napoleon was imprisoned and died. I think is that? Oh yeah, the Cayman Islands. Oh, you got to know the Cayman Islands. If you want somewhere to put your money, kids, put it in the Cayman Islands. The governments just can't touch it. But yeah, so all of these islands are still directly owned and administered by the UK. I think Gibraltar is the important one, because Gibraltar is this giant military base, and if you want to move from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea, you gotta go past Gibraltar. Britain's held that rock in Gibraltar for like the last 300 years, and they're never gonna give it up. The South Sandwich Islands, yeah. Those are the ones that are close to Antarctica. I think it's kind of an Antarctic staging base. But, so, you should know, like, I don't think you have to memorize all these territories, but just be aware that London has a pretty extensive colonial network still today in 2020. Most of these islands function as kind of military bases and maybe, like, little economic zones. Like, for example, I know that was the wrong click. I know the South Sandwich Islands, they have some oil deposits nearby them. So by Britain having the South Sandwich Islands, they're like, what up? Let's get some of that oil. And so, that's cool. But if you guys had a world map in front of you, I'd want you to just dot out where all these British islands are and just see that, it's pretty spread out all over the world, which is just impressive. And yes, UK owns, what is this, a quarter of Antarctica, if you want to get very technical. But there are also treaties saying everybody shares Antarctica, which is interesting too. All right, moving on. So let's check some of these out. Yes, here's the Rock of Gibraltar. So right here, this is the very bottom tip of Spain, and over there is Africa. And if you're a ship and you want to sail into the Mediterranean Sea, you got to be like, what up, Gibraltar? Gibraltar's going to be like, what up? It's a really tiny spot. Like, basically, it's an airfield, a port, a downtown, and a giant rock. This rock, I'll tell you, the British Army carved a hell of a fortress into this thing. And during both world wars, the Germans tried to take it, but you just can't. The Rock of Gibraltar is a super fortress. Other interesting fact, lots of monkeys in Gibraltar. Usually don't think of monkeys when you think of Spain, but supposedly there's like 1 million monkeys living on this thing, and it's constantly distracting people. And yeah, if you'll notice where Gibraltar is, it's on the very bottom tip of Spain. Spain would love to have this spot back, but Britain's never gonna give it up. And yeah, a lot of the people who live in the city of Gibraltar, they all speak English and they identify as English people. So, you know, they're super cool. All right. I don't remember what island. This is still Gibraltar. Yeah, this is just it from another perspective. So you just see there it is cutting into the Mediterranean Sea, and all these ships going by. All right. I think this is the South Sandwich Islands. So it's basically a bunch of penguins, but you know, yeah, the UK likes to administer it because from this island, they can control all the water resources around it and say what's up to your penguin friends. Yeah, and they got air bases on this. I think this is the Cyprus air base. I think this is the Falklands. And, all right, moving on. So, France also has a lot of places which it never gave up. France was probably second place in the global imperialism game, right behind England. But I think France still to this day actually has more colonies than the English do, especially considering the South Polynesia, or French Polynesia Islands. This is like 100,000 islands or something. It's so many islands. But yeah, so I'll zoom in, then I'll come back to this. The big ones to know here is French Polynesia is still to this day administered by Paris. I think this is St. George. I think that's the name of that little island. And then French Suriname is still administered by Paris. None of these spots have any independence. France and their government in Paris control all these islands, and they control French Suriname. So, interesting fact, the people of French Suriname are citizens of the European Union, and all these spots are considered EU membership spots. So, people in French Polynesia have European Union passports, which is just weird, but that's how the world works today. I know one of these islands, I think this one is Reunion Island. It's just a really good spot because it's not a lot of other islands around there in the South Indian Ocean. Good place to stop over if you're going down the Cape of Good Hope. And yeah, a lot of spots in the Caribbean. That's going to be really common with just about all these empires. Yeah, so, and then, what is that? Corsica? Yeah, France still owns Corsica in the Mediterranean Sea. So, once again, you don't have to memorize all these spots. I just want you to know where they are and know that, yeah, France is pretty spread out. They got all these random little islands all over the world. And same reasons that the UK has them. It's because they got some economic importance. You get all the underwater resources around it. Always a good stopover spot for trading ships. So they'll be like, what up? Parlez-vous français? And they'll be like, we speak French. And yeah, so a lot of spots around the world. Saint Maarten, I thought that was owned by the Netherlands. Huh? Maybe there's multiple Saint Martins. I don't know. But yeah, technically all a part of the EU. That's very interesting. All right, moving on. All right, French Guiana. I might have said French Suriname. But yeah, French Guiana, it's a part of South America, which is technically a part of the European Union. This is Reunion Island. It's an island totally out there in the middle of nowhere, but it's basically used to be a volcano, but there's a lot of people that live on there too. And then, yep, some of these French Polynesian islands. And, French Polynesia. It's a good place to go on a vacation. Might not be a good time right now, though. All right, so Spain also still has some colonies. I know they would love to get Gibraltar back. But Spain's colonies are kind of interesting because they're all right on up on Morocco. And Spain and Morocco hate each other. Because back, I think this is like 300 years ago, Spain invaded Morocco, took over 4 of their cities along the Moroccan coast, and never gave them back. And still to this day, they are owned by Spain. And what makes things also weird is these Moroccan cities are members of the EU. So the people who live in these cities are European citizens, and they have all the EU passports and the EU stuff. And if you're somebody who's trying to illegally immigrate into the European Union, this is your easy way in. So these cities have turned into like mini fortresses. And yeah, I'll zoom in on this picture. You can see that a lot of people are trying to get into the European Union, and that's the easy spot to do it. Also, the Canary Islands and the Balearic Islands, I'll zoom in on those. Those are all pretty close to Spain, all up in Morocco's business too. And I'll also add this. There's a very confusing part of Africa. I can't remember the exact name of it. But it's also bordering Morocco. Spain claims it. Morocco claims it. The people there claim independence. It's a political mess. So just knowing that Spain and Morocco hate each other is probably good enough. So, let's check it out. These are those 4 cities I was talking about. Penon de Velez, Penon de Alajuemas, Melilla. This is the one I see the most reports about. I think it's the biggest city. Melilla, and then Isla Charafas. So, these 4 spots in Morocco. Actually, 5, 6 spots? Dang, there's a lot. All still owned by Spain. Yeah, so there you go. Yep, and that's what the cities look like. They're part of Africa, but Spain owns them. And yep, a whole lot of defenses set up there to keep the European Union safe. And then Spain still also owns the Azores Islands. There they are down here. This was traditionally a good stopping spot for ships to go to the Americas. And then the Balearic Islands over here, those are still owned by Spain. One of these islands is Ibiza Island, which I hear is just the best place to have a party. It's sort of like Europe's version of Vegas, but way more focused on techno and house music. Alright, cool. Now, my favorite country, the USA. We've still got some colonies that are... Oh man, there's a really great video by CGP Grey, which talks about how screwed the people are who live on these places. But yeah, so these are all these island colonies that are owned by the United States, administered by the United States, but they're not states within the United States. And the big one being Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has something like 2.5 million people, and the people of Puerto Rico are American nationals, but not American citizens. Their political well-being is a confusing mess. And it's the same thing with a lot of these American islands. Samoa comes to mind. Guam. Is Saipan one? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, like the Northern Marianas Islands. I think Saipan might be one of those. Several of the small atolls. This is a funny anecdote. Back during the age of imperialism, we're talking like 150 years ago, the United States government, the federal government, was trying to catch up with Britain and France and these other kind of big countries. And they said, what parts of the world are not currently claimed? And they really looked into it. They found out there were these random rocks that birds lived on. And I don't want to curse in this in this lesson, but the congressman ultimately said bird poop rocks. Well, they didn't use the word poop. Bird poop rocks all around the world that are not claimed now belong to the United States. So we made a federal law saying we own all the bird poop rocks out there in the middle of the ocean. And that was smart of us doing that, because by owning those rocks, we thereby own all the land or the underwater resources that those rocks are close to. So And why do we have these bases, or these islands around the world? We use them all for military bases, like 100% of them. And a lot of these islands that we also have, we stole from the Japanese during World War II when we did our whole island hopping campaign. We said, we're taking these and we're not giving them back. I think we still own Okinawa to this day. Those were a very famous battle was fought in World War II. Saipan was also where a battle was fought in World War II. So these are our colonies, our imperial possessions. And we also took over parts of Germany in World War II. We took over parts of Japan in World War II. And we still have bases there as well. I think the United States today has 9 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and one of those aircraft carriers is based in Yokohama Harbor, Tokyo. So, we still got that going on. I don't know. I don't say we own Yokohama Harbor though, because we sort of lease it out from Japan. But we definitely kind of forced our way in there after beating them in the Second World War. So, yeah, let's check this out. Here's the United States. It's in the blue here. And yeah, this sort of light blue shows you the underwater resources that are owned around the world. And if you'll see, look, if you own some of these random little islands here, like the British and the French do, you've got access to a whole lot of underwater oil, underwater minerals. So it's important to lay claim to this stuff. And of course, here's Hawaii. And I think this is Guam, maybe Wake Island, and the Marianas are around there somewhere too. All right, so let's check it out. This has got to be Guam. This is one of our islands we still own. And then, yep, here's some of those Polynesian people being like, what up? We're American nationals. Are we American citizens? Not really. It's confusing. But, yeah, there's some attractive people out there in Polynesia. They're the largest people in the world. And, if you believe in, genetic theories, Polynesians are the winners. It's not the white people. Polynesians are the best. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, come on. Yeah, and then there's some of these American nationals living their lives. I think this is Puerto Rico. And, yep, Puerto Rico. A lot of people live there. This is San Juan, really big city, but they're American nationals, not American citizens. And then, I don't remember where this is. This might also be Guam. I know that in South Korea, a lot of Koreans were really excited to go on a honeymoon to Guam. And they kept talking to me about it. And they're like, haven't you ever visited Guam? You're an American citizen. That's part of your country. And I'm like, I've hardly ever heard about Guam. We go to Hawaii. And Koreans are like, oh, Hawaii's so far. We would prefer to go to Guam because it's a much shorter plane ride. Makes sense. Yeah, and then here's our military bases. As you can see, we're all over the dang place. So these technically aren't our imperial holdings because we're kind of renting or leasing these spots. But we got, some serious bases in the European Union, some serious bases in Japan and South Korea, some bases in the Philippines, or I think actually this might be Okinawa or Saipan. We've got a bunch of bases in the Middle East. I know Bahrain and Turkey are best friends. We do have a base in Cuba. It's called Guantanamo Bay. That's a whole another story about why we own Guantanamo Bay. It has to do with the Spanish-American War, and we just never gave that part of it up either. And yeah, we've got a surprising amount of bases around Africa, which is impressive to me. But yeah, if you'll notice, the American military, we're everywhere, except for the former Soviet Union. And that's because they don't really like us. And China and us, we're not best friends, but I don't think we're worst enemies either. So, American military all over the dang place. Yeah, here's one of our little setup shops. I think this is in Afghanistan. And then, yes, the American military, don't mess with it. We've got, I think today we might even have 10 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. I think we have 2 new ones currently under construction. So it'll bring us to a dozen nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. And if you want to express military power around the world, you gotta get yourself a carrier group. Okay? Because aircraft carriers, that's how you win. That's how you win global conflicts. And for some perspective, I think on planet Earth today, there are 20 aircraft carriers. We own 10 of them, and our allies own the other, 6 or 7 of them. So, if the entire world declared war on the United States, I'm pretty sure we'd still win. Just because we've got so much military hardware everywhere. So, it's pretty cool stuff. This is one of our military bases. I think this is in Okinawa. Yeah, it is, because here's Japanese. And I remember reading some stories that the people of Okinawa, are Japanese citizens, but they're kind of owned by the United States. And there's a bunch of weird political treaties where they are Japanese citizens, but they pay rent to the United States government. And they're getting really pissed off because they're like, oh, these helicopters make so much noise. And I think there was one time when one of our military planes accidentally dropped a bomb on a Japanese neighborhood. I know, for example, in South Korea, some young American soldiers were driving a tank around and they ran over 2 Korean elementary school girls, and it caused a terrible ruckus in that country. And they were like, get the F out, USA. So yeah, our military doesn't get the best rap around the world. Military makes mistakes. And it causes some tension politically with these other countries at times. Denounce the raping by U.S. Marines. Oh, crap. I've got some, I don't have raping stories, but I do have stories of when I was living in South Korea. I remember sometimes seeing signs on bars and stuff that said, no Americans allowed. But they would let in British people or Australian people. And I was just like, what the heck? And they said it's because American soldiers usually get really drunk and they cause a lot of problems. And I'm just like, dang it. Why is my country throwing me wrong here? All right, and then here's our aircraft carrier base in Yokohama, Japan. I think this is the USS Washington. Man, see, I'm like a human Wikipedia up here. All right, the Netherlands. Hey, Nederlander. Oh, Saint Maarten. Maybe that's the one where my student's from. But yeah, they've got 5 islands in the Caribbean. The ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao. I think one of these is a really awesome gambling island, which is sort of like the Las Vegas of Latin America. I want to say it's Curacao. But yeah, they speak Dutch. They are also citizens of the European Union. They have Dutch passports. And yeah, it's just these 5 little islands there in the Caribbean Sea. The Caribbean is just a political mess. There's just every little island country is related to a different language. Even some of these islands are split in half, and one half they speak Dutch, the other half they speak English. It's confusing. Go on a cruise sometime, but not now. And yeah, try it out. So here's Curacao. Oh, look at that, flamingos. And then, yep, Curacao. Really, really cool Dutch architecture down there. All right, boom. Denmark. Yep, they still got Greenland, and they're never gonna give it up. Earlier this year, Donald Trump asked to buy Greenland from Denmark, and Denmark's like, nope, it's our one thing. And it's funny that Denmark is Greenland is geographically 10 times as big as Denmark, so it's their permanent expansion zone. Maybe they'll build a bunch of Lego stuff there someday, I don't know. But yeah, there's Denmark owning Greenland. So here's Greenland. It's not very green. It's very snowy and kind of desolate. I think Greenland's total population is under 10,000. So not a lot of people live there. Whole lot of ice fishing. Probably doing some explorative stuff with underwater drilling nowadays too. But and yeah, I think they do own a couple little islands around here too. But all this is just leftover stuff from the Viking Age. I'm pretty sure that during imperialism times, some of the European countries tried to claim Greenland, and there were already some Viking outposts that identified as being Danish. And so they're like, no, this is a part of Denmark, leave us alone. So that's pretty funny. All right, now let's talk about some weird borders. So that's enough with the empire stuff. I don't have any more things to add to a map. But there's some very interesting interactions that some countries have with each other. I want to focus on what has to be the most confusing border in the world, which is the village of Bar-le-Hertog, that is both in the Netherlands and in Belgium at the same time. So let's look at the Google Maps here to give you some perspective. So here's Bar-le-Hertog. This is the Netherlands. This is Belgium. But Bar-le-Hertog is a village that isn't even split in half, with half being Belgium, half being Netherlands. The borders make no dang sense. So let's keep checking it out. Here's what the village looks like. It's supposedly a really pretty place, you know, this old European village. And so the orange is Netherlands. The green is Belgium. And yeah, like oh my gosh, like this is a enclave of the Netherlands inside of an exclave of Belgium. Oh man, the political terminology here is insane. Yeah, let's keep checking it out. So yeah, here's Dutch people. You know, I'm a big fan of the Dutch. They love the color orange. It's their thing. They have a holiday called Orange Day. More you know. And you know, windmills, flowers. That's really their jam. And then here's Belgium. They speak French or Flemish. Yeah, Belgium's also an interesting culture. And that together, these are called the Low Countries. A lot of people think that Belgium and Netherlands are like the same. Don't do that. The Netherlands, they'll really, really hate you. So let's keep checking it out. And then, yep, these two countries. Okay, so you don't have to write all this stuff in the blue. I'm going to do my best to explain the randomness of the village of Bar-le-Hertog right now. So the border, the complicated border stuff goes back 500 years or more. And because this village was sort of like the border town, people from both cultures lived there. And it wasn't until they signed a treaty in 1843 where they said, hey, every person who wants to be Dutch can be a part of the Netherlands. Every person who wants to be Flemish or Belgium can be a part of Belgium. And so they took the land those people currently lived on and allocated it to those two countries. And, I mean, the political mess continues. So this whole village is constantly labeling what side is Netherlands and what side is Belgium. It would be a really fun place to visit. But yeah, so there's enclaves inside of enclaves inside of enclaves, which is a political mess. Oh, man. Yeah, so you can... There's even restaurants that are half in both countries. So you could... One person could sit in Belgium, the other person could sit in the Netherlands, you could have a meal together. It's ridiculous. Many fireworks shops are found in Bar-le-Hertog, owing to Belgian laws controlling the sale of fireworks, being more lenient than the Netherlands. Thank goodness they all use the euro. Imagine how complicated that would be. You'd have to have two wallets if they had different currencies. And you also better be fluent in both French and Dutch, because those are the two languages that are probably spoken interchangeably in this city. So it is a interesting example of just how borders and politics can work when it's all sort of intertwined in one place like this. So yeah, Belgium and the Netherlands in the same home sometimes. Yeah, so here it is written in French and Dutch. And then, yeah, Bar-le-Nassau, Bar-le-Hertog. And there they are cutting the street in half. The streets are cut up. And yeah, even this, so you could shop in Belgium, but buy the stuff in the Netherlands. I wonder if they have to put different taxation laws on where the cash register is inside the store. There's a lot of unanswered questions that I have about the political nature of this village. So yeah, interesting stuff going on there. All right, now let's talk about Malaysia. Malaysia, way over there in the southeast part of Asia, has a pretty interesting history. So they were owned by the UK way back in the day, and they still, to this day, I believe, are cool with the Queen, and the Queen of England is the Queen of Malaysia. But what happened was, early on in Malaysia's history, there was a whole lot of inequality between the city of Singapore, which was like the big deal city, and the city of Kuala Lumpur, which they made the political capital. And a lot of people in Singapore, they felt like they were different from the rest of Malaysia. Like, there was a whole lot of Chinese and British immigrants. They were way more comfortable with English than they were with Malay. Like in Kuala Lumpur, they really tried to focus on that city, and Singapore felt neglected. So Singapore decided to quit the country, and people were afraid there'd be like a civil war and Singapore would lose because they're so small. And Singapore is a very important city in the world. Like, here, I'll get to the map eventually. But Singapore is one of the best geographic spots for a city on planet Earth. People were afraid there'd be a big conflict, the city would get destroyed. But that didn't happen. Malaysia was like, hey, Singapore, you want to bail? Fine. See you later. So that's pretty cool. And ever since, Singapore has been its own thing. But they do have a pretty good relationship with Malaysia today. And yeah, Malaysia is also all about Islam. Singapore is all about kind of being open to all the world religions. And I think they're a little more vibing with Christianity. So there were some religious differences that pushed that region away as well. So let's check it out. So Malaysia, they have almost the same flag as the United States. Kind of interesting. And it's basically the United States, but Muslim influence instead of 50 stars. So here's one of these Malaysian mosques. You always know it's a mosque because it has a minaret. And yep. And then, I know there's some violence happening in parts of Malaysia. This is like some terroristy stuff. I think especially in northern Malaysia. Thailand's having trouble in that part of the world too. But yep, Singapore, right there, the city at the bottom tip of Malaysia. And then this is kind of the terroristy trouble spot up here. But Malaysia is also interesting because it is this southern tip of Southeast Asia. And Malaysia also owns the top part of Borneo. My understanding is this top part of Borneo right here isn't very developed. Like, if you cut Malaysia into two countries, this would be like stage 3.5, maybe even stage 4, especially Kuala Lumpur is stage 4 for sure. But northern Brunei is just not as vibing. It's probably like a stage 2, stage 3. This is some pretty serious jungle over here. Northern Borneo. Brunei is its own country as well. See, this part of the world's also kind of a political mess. All right, and there's Kuala Lumpur, the famous Twin Towers. And yeah, here's just another map showing you Malaysia. It's kind of interesting how the country's split in two. It's sort of like the Michigan of Southeast Asia. Yep, and yeah, there's some problems in Malaysia for sure. Okay, so yeah, they were briefly the same country. They had political disputes. Singapore has been the wealthiest, smallest country in the world for the last 50 years. I know that Singapore has just great laws. If you ever want to start an international business, base it in Singapore. You're going to get all kinds of help and keep more money for yourself. And Singapore is one of those Asian tiger countries. Grew really fast in the 1990s. High five to Singapore. You're doing good work down there. But you did a terrible job in World War II. You really lost to the Japanese so fast, and you wanted to keep your money and didn't want to fight, and that was kind of rude of you. So I know that's a controversial statement, but I'll defend it. I have Singapore military friends. They're also disappointed. All right, so check it out. So yeah, Singapore, big ol' island, and it's packed to the brim with people. Like, every part of Singapore is being used. I think they are even doing some water reclamation stuff where they're like building more islands and growing Singapore so they can fit more people and make the city bigger. Singapore, cool place. Look at how fancy it is. Oh man. And I'll tell you, in Singapore, they have some pretty strict laws. If you're caught with a joint of marijuana, they will cut off your fingers. If you spit in the street, they will cane you in public. Like, this country does not care about you being out of line. They will punish you. So, Singapore for sure. All right, now let's talk about Borneo. So Borneo is this big old island that I was referencing earlier in Southeast Asia, and Borneo is a part of 3 countries. Most of it, and especially the southern half, is a part of Indonesia. The northern half is a part of Malaysia, but then the country of Brunei is like 2 northern parts as well. And geographically, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It should make sense that Brunei is like one connected zone. But why this country is so split up, or why this island is split up into 3 different countries, is because it is some of the most insanely thick jungle on planet Earth. Like, I'm not even confident the entirety of the island has been fully charted and mapped out yet. Because especially the central parts of this island are super isolated, really hard to get to, not a lot of rivers, it's just thick jungle mountains. Also, there's a lot of, just by this whole island, people practice Islam, but they practice kind of different styles of Islam. Like, Indonesian Islam is, I think, a little more hardcore than Malaysian Islam, and Brunei, they're also doing their own thing, too. So, let's check it out. Alright, there's the island of Borneo, and, yeah, these are population density, so you see people live on these cities, but then virtually, you have population density 0 to 9 live in the vast majority of the central part of this island. Literally no one lives there. It is a giant jungle island. So, oh well, hey, there are some rivers. But yeah, supposedly it's a pretty cool place. And that's where the orangutans come from. What up, monkeys? And then what do you got here? Yep, big old thick jungles. Okay, Azerbaijan and Armenia. This part of the world is also just a mess. Oh man, how do I even start? It's all about religion, okay? Armenia is Christian. Azerbaijan is a Shiite Muslim. They're one of the 3 Shiite Muslim countries in the world. And it just sort of has to do with the geography of the region. Like, there are these big mountains that some people didn't really like to live in. The Christian Armenian communities preferred to live in the valleys. There were Muslim, I want to say like sheep farmers that lived in the mountains. And so over time, as politics kind of settled, especially leading up into the modern era, they couldn't kind of easily choose where the Muslim people were and where the Christian people were. They wanted to be, their religion kind of determined their political identification. So as these countries got settled, the borders got really weird and really split, and it was all on religious lines. So let's check it out. So here's Azerbaijan, the capital city of Baku, and as you see here, this is all Azerbaijan, but then there's a split. And then here's a whole nother little province of Azerbaijan, which is way up there in the mountains, which is where a whole bunch of Muslim people also lived. So they're all Azerbaijani, and Armenia kind of splits them in half too. So, interesting stuff. And then, yeah, there are some conflicts going on, especially along the border, because it wasn't clean of where the Christians were and where the Muslims were, and it can cause some outstanding problems even to this day. Alright, so, yeah, I think these are some Azerbaijani stuff going on there. And then, yep, welcome to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, good luck. There you go, you'll need it. Alright, I'm finished. That's all the imperialism and weird border stuff around the world that you guys should know for the AP test. I'll do some of my more traditional Prezi stuff later. Okay, peace out.